Good morning. It's Amy Bennett with the AM Show. We made it to Friday. Yes, we did. So excited that it's Friday. It is Scott's weekend off, so we have a weekend together. I feel like because I've been out of town so much over the last month, because I went to the beach and we went to Atlanta for Emma's birthday. It seems like every other weekend that he's had off, I've been gone, and so we haven't had a weekend off just totally together in like since July or something. So it's it's crazy, and it's really good that we get to spend some time together. And I don't think we have any, I'm trying to think on my schedule, I don't think we have any big plans. So I think we're gonna be driving kids around. Speaking of driving kids, guys, Emma's been doing so well driving herself to school, and then yesterday after school she drove herself to Starbucks to meet with a friend, and then we went out to eat because we always eat out on Thursday nights, and she met us at dinner, which is really weird. So we went to a restaurant and the four of us were standing there, and then Emma drove up and met us there, and it was the weirdest thing ever. So I don't know, it's weird having, like, you think you're kind of done with firsts with your kids, and no, the firsts just change. And I don't know, so I was like taking pictures because it was the first time she had ever met us for dinner. So I know that might seem really little, but I don't know, it's just weird. It's weird. Okay, so it's Friday, and let me tell you a little bit about what's going on today. I have a friend who I have invited onto my podcast. Some of you that know me in real life, you might know Kathleen Cope, and I love her, and she has become a dear friend of mine over the past couple years, probably especially over the last year. We've gotten a lot closer, and I've invited her to share her story on the podcast. It's going to be coming, her episode won't be out until sometime later in September, but we're recording later this weekend. And this morning I woke up and went back. I don't even know how I got there, but I ended up in Isaiah at a couple of verses that God had actually given me when I first started Feathers. And I just want to share them with you today. And for me, it was just like it's been such a confirmation that I don't know, both of us are on the right path, and it just encouraged me as I go into this interview today. It's a big leap for her to even share her story. So let me read it. It says, in that day, this is Isaiah 12:4, and I'll read 4, 5, and 6. In that day you will say, give thanks to the Lord, call on his name, make known among the nations what he has done, and proclaim that his name is exalted. Sing to the Lord, for he has done glorious things. Let this be known to all the world. Shout aloud and sing for joy, people of Zion, for great is the Holy One of Israel among you. And I actually have written in my Bible beside it, Feathers 2015. That's when I started Feathers, and God was just encouraging me. And the whole point of my podcast is to have a platform for...
I just want to say bye.
Oh, bye.
Bye. I love you. What?
I said I love you.
Oh.
Okay. Sorry, guys. Yeah, I'm running a little bit late, so they're leaving while I'm doing this. Anyway, so let me think of where I was. Feathers 2015, and of course they shut the door, so Bella wants out. She has to have a path to me. So Feathers 2015, the whole point of this was to have a platform for really women to share their stories. This is what God told me, 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago. God had been so faithful to me and our family as we particularly walked through our adoption, and God had been faithful to many women in the same way, and he wanted those stories shared. And so the podcast was just kind of like a space, a platform for women to come and do that. And I was just reminded of that. Kathleen and I were just talking as we prepared, and she was like, she said it, I don't think she even knew that I had those words to say about the podcast, but she was like, thank you for making this space for me to share my story, because this is new for her to share her story. And I was just reminded of these verses and the conversation I had with God 2.5 years ago that he wanted a platform for women to share their story, how he had been faithful in women's lives. And so it was just a sweet reminder this morning that I somehow ended up in Isaiah and was reminded of these. And so I'm going to share them with Kathleen. I haven't shared them with her yet, but I just wanted to share that because I just wanted to show that's another example of God confirming his work through his word. So there's nothing about a podcast in the Bible, right? There's nothing about a podcast, but God used the words of Isaiah to speak to me about a podcast. And the thing that I love, it says, make known among the nations what he has done, and let it be known to all the world. Guys, years ago, how would we even have done that? Made it, known to the whole world. And now we have the internet and we're able to actually do that. We have, on the podcast, we have listeners from all over the world. And it's just incredible to me to see how, God's scripture just really confirms God's work in my life in 2018, right? Isn't that just weird? Isaiah, a prophet, thousands of years ago, the words that he wrote are still applicable. Now, I don't think we can just apply anything we want to our life. I think it has to be spirit driven, and I think God gives us kind of a specific word, and we use specific passages for specific instances in our lives, and that's between you and God. And I can just say that God definitely used that passage to confirm to do Feathers, and that was part of what Feathers was doing. He's using it to make known what God has done to all the world and all the nations. And so it was just a reminder today that that's what we're doing, sharing Kathleen's story. And we've been really wrestling through, is it time for her to really share it? And we just keep getting a yes. And so that's an example I wanted to share, because that's a real life example of how God confirms his work in our lives. It's just as simple as that. And the other thing that I wanted to say about this is that your story is powerful, and in fact you are meant to this is like a command, right? Give thanks to the Lord, make known, proclaim, sing, shout aloud. These are all commands that we are supposed to do when we are believers. We are supposed to make known what God has done in our lives. And so the other thing I want to encourage you don't have to be on a podcast to do that, right? You don't have to be on a podcast. It can be done one-on-one in the conversation, that you would actually be brave enough. And I know it's so hard. It's hard for me how do you bring faith up and God up in everyday life in 2018? It's kind of a weird, it's kind of a weird, feeling, vibe or whatever. But can we do that one-on-one? Can we do that? Can we use our social media accounts? I know you guys are on social media because you're on it right now. Whether you guys are watching from YouTube later, or Facebook Live now, or Facebook later, I don't know. Who knows who might be listening to this video? Isn't that weird? As the internet works, it could be 20 years from now, somebody could be looking at archives of this video. That weirds me out. But hi from 2018, whenever you are listening. And so I don't even know where I was going with that. Oh yeah, because social media. Use your social media accounts to talk about what God has done. It's not about what you have done. And I think that's a big thing for me, is that a lot of times I am tempted to, tout what I've done, the accomplishments that I've done. And it's not about that. It's, it's a lot of times where we failed and how we've struggled in our pain and our suffering, and how God has entered into that. That's really where the story is. So I just want to encourage you, maybe look for opportunities to actually talk about God and what he has done in your life. And I can tell you, as I've prepared specifically for Kathleen's episode and heard her story, it has made me praise God. It has increased my faith, because when I see what God has done in her life, it's wow, God is really real, and he is really very loving, and he's so good. And it just brings me to tears if I sit and think about it. And so I think that's the power of our story, is that when we look to see what God has done, yes, it encourages us, but it has the power to impact other people's faith. And that's incredible to me. Just by, she didn't do anything but share her story and, say say the truth. You just tell the truth. What has happened? That's all you're doing, is telling the truth. You know, I wish I could go to the verse in Revelation, but there's a verse in Revelation about people's word of their testimony, and that's really what it's all about. And that's what we're called to be, right? Go be witnesses to the ends of the earth, make disciples, and that's what it is just sharing our story, what God has done, and pointing, you know, even pointing others to other people's story, right? Help other people share their story too. So anyway, that's what's on my heart this morning. And maybe, and let me just give you one more thing that just came to mind, is that maybe it's time for you to sit down and actually write out your story. That's a practice that I did a couple years ago. Like, I actually started when I was really little, and just kind of traced God's hand and saw that God was so faithful to me from a very young age. And it's just amazing. So maybe sometimes we just have to actually look to see. Like, sometimes we think like, I don't have a story to share, like it's so boring, and I don't have any big thing to share. But that was me. But if you look back and you trace it, you can see the hand of God in your life. I can guarantee it. You can see the hand of God. The simple fact that we are still here and we still have life, like our breath comes from Him, and that in itself is a testimony. We don't live without Him. So if nothing else, you're living and breathing because of Him. So anyway, let me say good morning. I know I'm running a little bit later than I normally am. Sorry about that. Stephanie, good morning. Darian, Marie says, good morning. It's Friday. Yes, I'm so excited it's Friday. Good morning, Kathy. I see that you were able to join. And Angela, good morning, Angela. Marie said that's her. You don't have a big grand story, but looking back, it's so amazing. Yeah, I think that's totally true. It definitely has been true of me. Like, I don't have like a great big story, but I mean, I can say that God has been so faithful. I mean, even, and just to give you an example, well, this is kind of, oh goodness. Okay, let me give you a short testimony. Here's an example. Let me give you a short testimony. When I was like 18, there goes Emma. Tucker went to go check it out. When I was 18 months old, I had a straight pin somehow get into the wall, my ovary wall, uterine wall. Nobody knows how it was. It, like, literally, if you go to the hospital, it actually says freak accident. My mom is a seamstress, and always did have, like, sewing needles around and stuff. So we did have them around the house, but nobody knows, did I swallow it? Did it go up? Did it go in? Like, nobody really knows how that happened. Freak accident. But the Lord spared me, and He spared all those parts. And I think just, when I look back, I just think, wow, Satan had it out for me and wanted to stop my family, really wanted to stop my family, and wanted to take that away from me. And he didn't, and he allowed my parents to get me to the hospital, and just the doctors tried to say nothing was wrong, and they insisted, and they ended up doing surgery on me and getting it out. And thank the Lord, when I was pregnant, they actually got my records to make sure that they didn't think anything was going to happen during my pregnancies. And I'm grateful that I was able to birth two my beautiful girls, and so thankful. And I just think that was a grace of God. And so even as early as 18 months, I have a story of God's hand on my life and protection and healing, really. And so I think if you were to trace your life back, you will see Him work in ways that you just aren't aware of. Just living life, you think you have no story, but you do. It's all grace. It's all grace. Anyway, so I didn't plan on saying that. So there's my opportunity to share a little story about what God has done in my life, even at a very young age. Yes, Kathy says, this is just confirmed for me to write my story. I've been praying about writing a book. Yes, thank you, Jesus. Yes, do it. If nothing but for yourself and for your family. My mom actually took some time, I think last year, just to write out her story, and I've got it saved on my computer, and I'm so thankful that she did that. So when our family looks back, we can see the hand of God even in the generation before. And so I think it's so important that we take time to do that. So, wow, didn't know I was going to get into all that today. All right. You guys have a wonderful weekend. I am going to enjoy a weekend with my husband and probably carting kids around. I don't know what else we're doing. Church, I don't know. Hopefully we're going to sell our van. By the way, if anybody wants to buy a Honda Odyssey, we have our van for sale. I think we're going to, because Emma is driving around, not all 5 of us are together much when we drive now because she's driving. We want to get rid of our van. It's like we just bought it last year, so it's almost brand new. And we're going to probably downsize to a smaller sort of SUV-ish type thing. So anyway, if you know anybody that needs a Honda Odyssey, I have a great one. So anyway, all right guys, I am going to get off here and get to work, and hope you have a wonderful weekend, and Lord willing, we'll see you back on Monday morning. Bye.